Hi there, welcome to the latest Democracy 4 developer blog. I'm Clef, I'm the programmer and designer of the game, and I'm going to talk about the stuff that's happened in the last few weeks developing the game. We're still in early access at the moment, but not for a lot longer. We're waiting for a Japanese translation, basically. So there's kind of 5 things that have changed recently in the game. A lot of it's modding stuff. We've basically added a policy editor for mod support, a situations editor, and then outside of modding there's been a rebalance of situations, and in addition to that there's kind of like a new way in which situations affect people's happiness, and also there's this whole protest vote system. So if I have Steam running in the background sensibly, then I get to this update your mod screen. This is a mod that I play about with now and then that I submitted, and I'm going to show you the new stuff relating to that. So if I go to add mod content, we now have a policies tab, and the policies stuff is kind of new recently, and it's kind of self-explanatory really. So you could click on new if you want to create a new one. So when you put in the title, that is the title that's what gets displayed to the player, and we basically make that lowercase and replace spaces with underscores and do other stuff to get the actual internal name of it. And the description here can be pretty long, and this here is the political capital stuff. This isn't particularly well obvious or explained here. So min cost, max cost, this is money, and min income, max income, this is money. So this is how much money the policy will cost depending on the slider, and how much money it will bring in depending on the slider. And then we've got the political capital cost to introduce this as a policy, cancel it, to raise the slider or lower it to the maximum extent, and then you have like an implementation delay of how many turns it should take to implement a change or an introduction to this policy. It's got to be in one of the existing policy groups. At the moment you have to pick an existing slider in the game, so you might pick tax if it's a tax. You can create others, but you can't do it within this in-game stuff. The flags are special things that are explained in the mod tools. So you can add prerequisites, which again there's a list. So you could have, for example, this is a policy that only applies if you're a country where you have a land border with another country, or if you have a coastline or whatever. So you can add those. Cost multipliers and income multipliers, they're quite a complicated thing. So this is where you can have a policy whose cost depends on some other value in the game. So for example, a policy that costs money for each car that exists in your country would depend on car usage. So you can scale things like that. Same with income multipliers. So if you have a tax on tobacco, then the income that you get is going to be scaled by the extent to which people smoke. So that kind of stuff is what cost multipliers and income multipliers are for. If you want to add or edit the effects of the policy, that's down here, and it draws you a nice little graph, and you can kind of fiddle about with things to make the graph different, whatever, and then you click on save and you've done it. So you still have to know a fair bit about how the game works in terms of modding. You have to read like the modding guide to really understand it, but this makes it really easy to add a new policy. If you want to add 10 policies, then it's probably a lot easier to do it here than directly editing spreadsheets. If you hover over the icon, it will tell you the path it expects to find that icon. So if you're thinking, why doesn't my icon show up, it's loading that. So you can see it's rural internet subsidies, capital letters, spaces, but it actually replaces the spaces with underscores, and it makes everything lowercase, puts icons underscore in front of it, and it looks there. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, so we did that. Situations as well, so pretty much the same thing, and again it will show you where the icon is. Similar stuff. The start text and the end text for a situation is stuff like you get like a pop-up when a situation happens for the first time. So it's like if this was what would be a good situation to have in the game? Let's say we had environmental terrorism or something. Then, like, your start text would be, you know, we've started to encounter environmental terrorism in our country, and the end text is like the threat from environmental terrorism has subsided or whatever. The thresholds here, start at and end at, they can be the same if you want, but you can have them different, and the reason for that is, I think, with a lot of situations, especially negative situations in politics and economics, you get to a certain bubbling up of problems that lead to, for example, homelessness, and then if the factors that influence homelessness reduce just a bit, it doesn't solve it immediately. You now have a homelessness problem that you're going to have to spend a lot more effort than to fix it than it would to prevent it happening. It's kind of like, well, like climate change. So it's always easier to stop a bad situation happening than to fix it once it's triggered. So this is why they can be different. And again, we've got cost income and the functions and everything. So you can adjust the slope at which a situation costs things. So I should explain this actually. So what these are is these are linear here. So this is saying the economic cost of this situation is completely linear, going that way. I'm flipped. Like if the situation is at 50%, it will be 50% of the cost. If it's at 100%, it'll be 100% of the cost. Or you can have a slope, so the situation gets more and more expensive very rapidly as it climbs, and you can add like new influences and whatever you want in here, and then again just save. So this is the new mod tools stuff. It's just an expansion really, and we got more to do there, sim values, and I'll add countries as well. The aim here is to make modding as easy as possible, so you can have a mod that it's a low barrier of entry. I want loads of people to play about with it, because modding is kind of fun, and not everyone's going to agree. So you might want to mod in stuff that other people think shouldn't be in the game, and what have you. This dilemma stuff here is just because I was like messing about. I've copied in loads of other dilemmas. Anyway, that's the mod tools stuff at the moment, and there's more to come on that. Okay, I'm going to talk a bit now about some changes that happened to situations. So first of all, I rebalanced all of the situations in the last update. So they're all slower. They're not harder to create or to stop, but they're slower. So a lot of the impacts on situations, whether they're good or bad, like the rail strike is a situation, it's a negative situation because obviously trains aren't running, and this is slower, not harder to fix. So the reason I did this is we've kind of got a bit of a balance problem in the game that hopefully I'm edging towards this being a bit of a fix for it, in that the first election can be a bit hard but interesting and challenging, but if you win, then the second term is really easy, because basically you can't win the first election without solving a lot of the country's problems, and if you solve a lot of the country's problems, there's no challenges later. So what I've done is change things so that these situations, the negative situations like these, they're slower rather to fix, which makes sense. I mean, you can't solve, so that one there is like tax evasion. We got quite a few strikes here. We're playing France, so it's kind of understandable. We've got a problem with respiratory disease. You can't fix respiratory disease in 4 years, really. It takes longer, and you can't get an egalitarian society from scratch within 4 years. So anyway, it takes a lot longer for these things to be solved or to be created in the case of like positive situations now, which is good, because it means that in the second term you've still got a lot of stuff that you need to deal with, and it keeps the game fun for longer, and that's a good thing. But of course the trouble is that then makes it harder. So it can then make the game too hard. So in addition to like rebalancing everything, we've introduced some new effects. So up here we've got rail strike. This triggered quite recently. It was kind of bubbling under, and I'm not quite sure. It could have been like a drop in unemployment might have just pushed it over the edge. So drop in unemployment would mean that unions feel more powerful, because obviously if you've got unemployment, everyone wants a job and whatever. Unions are powerful when there's full employment. So anyway, it just peaked over the top there and triggered. So the rail strike triggered. The rail strike triggered quite recently, so it's quite a new situation, and we're trying to fix it by various means. It would adjust labour laws and stuff like that, trying to deal with all these strikes. So it's a fairly recent thing. So as of the latest version, everyone, the everyone group, which everyone is in, gets short-term effects, what we call in the game grudges, which could be positive or negative. So we have here like bad news about the rail strike. These things don't make any sense in those contexts. I should get rid of them. So basically something bad has happened, so everyone's a little bit miserable about it. But this used to be worse than this. This will die out over time, this effect, the bad news about the rail strike. So if we solve the rail strike, there'll be good news about the rail strike. It's over, and we'll have like a positive income, and that will die out over time. Now what this is supposed to represent is kind of like the news cycle. So for example, if there is a rail strike throughout most of your first term and you put in place whatever policies are required to fix it, everyone is then happy for a bit, and then after 6 months, a year, they've kind of forgotten that you solved that. The rail strike, that's in the past. We don't give the government credit for that. It was ages ago. Who cares? So that's in the game. And when I was doing my playtesting of it, it was quite interesting, because I suddenly realised that there's this emergent gameplay that is similar to the real world, where you have an incentive playing this game if you are the president. If there's a bad situation, try and arrange to fix it just before an election, because that's when your successes are freshest in the mind of your citizens. Which is cynical, but it is a normal gameplay reaction to the phenomena that people have short memories. That's now modelled in the game. And I'm going to show you something else that's modelled in the game now, hopefully. I'm going to talk about it, and then hopefully I can show you it on the election screen. So this is the popularity at the moment. So this is the average approval of citizens, and this is the percentage of them who we think will actually vote for you. These are different things. Conceptually, they're different things. So everyone in the game has an opinion of you, and we map it here. These little people are everyone in the game, and here they're fanatically opposed, here they're fanatically supportive, and the group of people are kind of distributed, but they'll kind of move around. Now something that we've never modelled in the game before is we have had every voter as a rational actor who is independent of other voters. Okay, because there's a kind of, I don't know, it's not prisoner's dilemma, but there's a kind of collective piece of strategy that happens in real world politics, whereas this person here, Daphne Morale, they're not actually a member of the party as they turn green, but they obviously really support the party, right? And it could be that they're more extreme than our party position is. So say we're liberal, say we're really liberal capitalists, they could be really liberal, libertarian, ultra liberal capitalists, and they think they vote for us, but they actually because they think we're the best party out of the three that are really in the running. But really, if there was a liberal mega party and we had proportional representation or whatever, they'd probably vote for them, for example, just hypothetically. Now, in the game, what voters do is they will look at the 2 or 3 parties. If they're going to vote, which depends on loads of factors, they will pick the party that most aligns with their views. So if they're really happy, up to a certain extent here, all these people here are going to kind of vote green, people in the middle will vote blue, they've got loads of members, look, and people down here will vote red. So we don't really have many people fanatically opposed to us. But in the real world, obviously people's politics are more complicated than that. So here's an example. Say you're a communist in the United States, okay, you will probably vote Democrat, okay? But if all the polls show in the next election that the Democrats are going to win by a landslide, you might feel safe in the knowledge that you're not going to get a Republican president. I'm going to vote for this totally minor third-party communist candidate because I know the Democrats will win. I probably don't really want the communists in, but I want to push the leader of the Democratic Party to the left. This is kind of like a protest vote to Bernie Sanders, for example. And we now model that in the game. So we've added that. So voters will look at the polls. Voters now know what this is. They now know what all of this is. And they now have knowledge of this. And they will look at like the voting intentions and they will think, how close is the election? Is it close enough for me to risk voting for someone else? Okay. And if it is, some of them, a small percentage of them will do that. So actually, if this blue line was all the way up to 95% or whatever, and it looked like everyone was going to vote for my party, I don't know what my party is, we are the Social Democrats, then actually on the polling day, you would find that the Social Democrats didn't do that well. I mean, they did well, they won, clearly, but there were a bunch of votes going to other parties. You think, what on earth is going on? What this addresses is it does something that's very important to me, which is it tries to simulate the real world as accurately as I can. And we see this all the time. We see people going, it's a really close election. I think Joe Biden is far too moderate, but I'm going to vote for him because I don't want Trump or whatever. And the other way around as well. So everyone compromises with their voting choice slightly, but people, when they feel they can get away with it, they won't compromise. Now, actually, this is a really close election, so it shouldn't happen. Let's see what happens. Okay, yeah, it's not going to happen. Okay, no one's going to take the risk, because you can see this is really pretty close. So we have these three parties. Hardly anyone votes for the Libertarian Freedom Party. As it happens, we lost. And loads of people didn't vote. But let me find an example of where the election isn't close and that's not true. Okay, here's a completely different game. This time I'm playing South Korea, and this time things are, I think, going really well. I know it's not a close election at all. Okay, so we have an extra column has shown up. We predicted that. The election system has predicted that. So here are smaller parties. So obviously I'm absolutely crushing it here as the United Republicans. There's the people who disagree with me in the No Going Back party. And then we've got all these tiny parties that we're not even naming. Okay, so I got 83% of the vote, which is pretty amazing, right? But I would probably have got like, well, I'd have got that 6.4% probably as well. So quite a few of my voters, more than 10% of my voters, decided to take a chance on other parties, and they show up here. And if we look at the vote analysis, you can see the people who are grey, these are people who decided that they would risk voting for someone else. Okay, so actually it's quite annoying because it's quite hard here to tell the difference. I should fix this. So there are some people who didn't vote. Grey is people who do vote, but they vote for smaller parties. Yeah, I shouldn't have picked grey. That was a really bad idea. There you go. So 61% approval, that voted there, and they voted for one of the smaller parties. Their 61% approval is way over 50%, so they are natural supporters of my party, but they decided to lend their vote, as they say, to someone else. If you're wondering, what gives, dude? This is someone who they did vote, and they voted for the other party, and it's because some people are they get left behind with party allegiances. Occasionally you'll see this, you'll see spots of one colour in another. You think, what is that? So this is someone who very passionately kind of opposed me, and was in the they weren't in the other party, were they? Not a member, no. So this was someone who was like always voting for the other party. They have strong party loyalty, and whatever I've done, I've vastly swung things in my direction. But these people are really loyal. They're voting against their interests, so they're voting for the party they've always voted for, even though if you actually quiz them on policies, it'll turn out that they actually prefer my party. Over time they will weaken, and these people will turn to the black colour, the colour of my party. And sometimes it's the other way around, just in case you wonder. Anyway, so this is smaller parties. It's a new thing. I really like it. I think it's great. Like everything, it will need a bit of balancing. So that's like protest votes and stuff like that. It's really very interesting because like analysing how people voted and why they voted is fascinating stuff. People vote for very irrational reasons. Or they don't vote for very irrational reasons. Anyway, it's a new thing. It's in the game. I hope you like it. I'm interested in feedback to see what people think about it. So a bunch of different things gone in at the moment. You can do a bit more balancing stuff and a bit more modding support stuff, coming up. Then we're going to have the Japanese translation go in, and soon we're going to come out of early access. I don't know exactly when. It depends on the Japanese translation. And then we'll still be doing updates anyway. Anyway, if you like this video, please like and subscribe and stuff like that. And but the best thing you could possibly do if you like the game, tell other people about the game, and also give us feedback on what you think would improve it, and give modding a go, because it's not as hard as hopefully most people think. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you again. Cheers.